Hey guys, this is Al from El Rey Collection. I'm going to do something a little different today. There's been some really spirited, exciting conversation in the Discords relative to cards people like and why. And it made me think to myself why I like certain cards and how I buy cards. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to walk you through some of that. This, by no means, is trying to convince you this is how you should buy cards, or even that you like cards that I should like, or vice versa. I think the one thing that is absolutely apparent in all these conversations is that people from different cultures, from different backgrounds, all have different preferences, and isn't that great? I think that makes us better as a global community and even as a collecting community. So I think it's fantastic. I look forward to the market and individuals deciding. And by the way, if you like something that the market doesn't, that's even better for you, because in the end you can buy something you enjoy more for less money. What I'm going to walk you through is some examples, and I particularly picked things that we've been talking about in the Discord, the R9 cards, as well as the Neymar cards. So, I think that it hopefully will be interesting, and we can share some data, and ultimately have a nice, pleasant conversation. And in the end, people, I always say, collect what you like, what you love, and you're generally going to be really, really well off if you do that. So without further ado, let's this really, really long disclaimer. Basically, I'm not telling you to buy anything. I'm not telling you that you're going to do well if you do. I'm not making any future predictions. But in general, I think most of you who are watching this video understand that if you're long soccer, these are two really, really epic players. Ronaldo, Fat Ronaldo, is absolute legend striker. Nearly won 3 World Cups, did win 2, and lost in '98 in the final. Just an epic player for Brazil, and his career, though hindered by injuries, was also just amazing at every stop. So I think obviously he's amazing, and Neymar, if not for Messi and Ronaldo, could have been potentially the best player of the generation. That's probably a big statement, but certainly he is really important. He's on the cusp of becoming the all-time Brazilian goal scorer, which needs to count for something. So we're talking about super important players. In general, though, I'm not telling you to buy them. Please do your own research and advise yourself on what you should and shouldn't buy, and when. But it all starts with research, as you're going to see as I kind of walk through, how I think about things. Maybe that'll be helpful to you, and maybe it won't. Maybe that the empirical formulas of how I look at things may, in fact, take some fun out of it for you. So if that's the case, then please, collect the way that you'd like to collect. Okay. So with that said, again, this is just a reminder. I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just trying to place a framework. And the market is going to decide. It's not going to be what I decide or what anyone else, tells you. I think that the market can change. We've seen that change in soccer as time goes on, as real good information is widespread to the community. And personal preferences are super hard to calibrate for. I've talked about this on other videos. Some people don't like pogs. Some people don't like stickers. Some people don't like things that aren't panini. Some people don't, it's just really difficult. So I'm not even going to imagine what your criteria are, but I encourage you to put your criteria in some sort of a framework. So you need to do this yourself, and my examples are just that. They're my examples, right? I would not expect them to be yours. In fact, that would be a little robotic and really disappointing if you just, automatically said, oh, well, Al says this is something good. Well, it's something good for Al, but maybe not you. I mean, I was in Brazil in that 1998 World Cup final, watching the final in Brasilia, actually, and it was just devastating, right? So I have like a super attachment And then, obviously watching Ronaldo come back and win in 2002, I have a massive attachment to Ronaldo and his yellow Brazil jersey. That to me is really important. But if you were, if you're an Inter Milan fan or PSV, and that was a highlight, and you went to those games, you're going to have totally different looks at that. So, anyway, so just please, bear with me if you disagree with it. That's completely fine. I encourage that. Okay, and then I always try to start with the most objective data because there is so much subjectivity in collecting. Always try to start with the most objective data we have, and some of the things we have are just what would you call it? The pop reports are probably the most objective data that we have, which is a little bit disappointing that we don't have more. I wish companies would talk about print runs, would talk about all that, but we just don't have it. So, but anyway, let's take a look at what those things say, the data that's out there. So we have pricing data, we have pop report data, and then when you are filtering through the data, it can lead you to conclusions that you didn't necessarily think, and sometimes they don't even validate decisions that you've made and cards that you've bought. And I'll talk about some of that as we go through, because that was the case for me, in this. And then I'll also, for those of you who think that I have particular biases, I'll just disclose you and show you my cards. Every scan you'll see on my presentations is my card. So, I'm never taking taking a card from a different place and trying to show you and say, oh, I only have I have a real high grade here and I have a low grade. I'll show you everything, that I have. You guys decide if I'm more balanced one way or another. I don't really consider myself primarily an investor. Of course, you'd like to do well, with the investments you make, but, I've always been a collector, and that's how I get the most enjoyment out of the hobby. Okay, so again, this is just to show you an approach. It may or not work for you. So let's just go and have fun and enjoy the discussion. So first off, again, starting with the data, and I'm not going to talk about the other 94-95 Ronaldo Volt Ball 95 card, which is actually scarcer. I'm just going to focus on the headshot because multiple reasons, but more than anything, I think this is just the easiest one to talk about. I have them all, but so first the disclosure. I have in total 7 of the 94-95 vote balls, including PSA 9, an SGC 10, and multiple BVG copies, and a couple more at the vault. So I'm definitely heavily leveraged towards this 94-95 Panini. Sticker. It was always basically when I started collecting, everybody always considered this the rookie. A few years after I started collecting, people found El Mundo Deportivo. This particular card, even though they label it in different ways, 1994, Panini Vote Ball 95. This one says this is one of the earlier ones, 1995 Panini. They're going to start to label them on seasons. And so what you'll see, I believe, what I understood from Matt Hendler from PSA, is they're going to start putting 94-95 Panini Vote Ball 95, which makes the most sense. These cards weren't just issued in 1994, right? These stickers were issued for the season, which includes 1994 and 1995. So at least in the Dutch season, as most European seasons. So I think that'll add a lot of clarity back, to the market. I think it's right that, I would have been fine if they had 1994. I would have been fine if they had 1995, the beginning of the season, the end of the season. The problem is with PSA and many others, they've been very inconsistent in how they labeled things. Getting some consistency is really going to be key for the market, because then the market can calibrate. It can say, hey, do I want a card that was only issued in 94? Or do I want a card that was issued in 94, 95, on top of many other issues, right? So those are those. In total, I have 7 pretty deep. In total, I have 3 3 El Mundo Deportivos. These are a little scarcer. Um, and so that's my disclosure piece. The condition, rarity and just total amounts. At first, we have in total 148 different ones that have been graded. A huge amount at BGS, 37, 13 at SGC, and the most of them being PSA. So, in total, it's basically a 3-to-1 ratio. It is interesting to me, sometimes I particularly get really lazy and I just grade. I just look at the PSA pop reports because usually it's the biggest. And you know what? It's a lot of work. The BGS pop report really is terrible, hard to get. And the SGC one, it's okay, but it's just not as easy as the PSA one. So a lot of times I just look at the PSA one. And if I would do that, I'd say, okay, well, there's about half as many El Mundo Deportivos as there are vote balls. So, at first blush, you may say, okay, well, that's some scarcity, or some relative rarity, but, it doesn't tell the whole picture, at least on graded cards. And I'm even going to go out on a limb and say, based on my experience, searching for cards, seeing them, understanding how many I've seen ungraded of both of these, that this disparity is even greater. It's been quite a while that the El Mundo Deportivo has sold for what I'd say, quite a bit of money. And so a lot of people searched for this sticker through time. And because they did, I think, it's just really hard in my experience. Again, I'm an American living in America, searching for these in Spain. It's much more daunting than it is for me to find the vote ball R9. And this is a little counterintuitive to me, mostly because the vote ball, comes from a small country. So, if you look through the lineage of the vote ball, series all the way back to the early 80s, these are really hard stickers to find. But when we start to get to the 1990s, they become much more available, and you'll be able to find this vote ball. The price may be higher as the market appreciates Ronaldo, but they're not. I don't think they're ever going to be a scarce item. I wouldn't be surprised if the vote ball triples from this and we end up with 500 copies. Still very small when you consider the importance of Ronaldo. And the Mundo Deportivo also triples to 150. I'm not sure, right? It's just a guess. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be shocked, and I wouldn't be terrified as a collector or an investor of those numbers for that reason. Again, we're talking about an epic player. I love both of these stickers. You can see I have a number of them, and my ratio is slightly more than 2-to-1, but the actual ratio and graded is 3-to-1. Then my next question that I ask is, say, when I'm as a collector, and I'm not the type of collector that always has to have the highest grade and things. In fact, if you watch my videos, I rarely have PSA 10s, for example. Is the condition rarity. So let's take a look at the condition rarities for the vote ball sticker. Well, what you end up seeing is saying, okay, well, on a relative basis, and by the way, when I do this, kind of personally, when I'm making this type of a spread, I spread most of the grades, or most of the grades that are the grades that I think I'm going to focus on. Here, just so it shows up on the screen, I kind of lump them together, and so there's going to be a little bit of data accumulation errors. Well, not errors, but just that the nuance is here that you may come to different conclusions if you separate this out by individual grade. But in general, and that's all I'm trying to do is give an example of thought. Again, you'll be more precise as you lay this out by numbers, is to say, okay, how many have been graded? We talked about the basically 98, 100 for PSA, and of those, 25% are in the near mint to mint range. So, it's 1 in 4 is in that real, what I'd say, investor range, and I'm going to call the 4 to 6 range a collector range. Of course, you can invest in 4 to 6s, and of course, you can collect, 1 in 3s and 7 to 10s. But in general, I think there's a bit of a bifurcation in a lot of the card collecting markets, not just the soccer market, that the higher end cards are typically going to investors. They're typically going to partial share companies, and the collectors aren't necessarily competing on those cards as much as they used to. And we've, myself included, are kind of in the middle in this collector grade. So, but what you'll find is you get basically 1 in 4 is in this high grade thing. So on a relative basis, a high grade PSA copy is actually an anomaly, especially when you compare that to Beckett, where shockingly, again, these are small sample sizes, but more than 2/3 of their cards are in 7 to 10. So are they being extra easy on these stickers? Have they been has it just been complete luck that the stickers that got submitted to them happen to be higher grade ones? Well, the answer is we don't know. But to me, when I look at this, and then SGC only has 1 out of 13 in the 7 to 10 range, and actually you just saw it. That's the SGC 10 that I have. So are they being, what's going on there? And the answer is we're never going to know, but it makes me a lot more nervous about getting a higher grade, BVG card as opposed to a PSA one. That's just something that jumps out at me as part of this analysis when you look at it. And then when you look at the Mundo Deportivo, what you find out is that PSA actually has graded most of these, 41, and BGS has never graded the card, and SGC has graded only 3. So the Mundo Deportivo, for those of you, as most of you probably know, that the Panini Vote Ball 95 was issued in impacts, and I'll start to get some of these albums out here. See if you guys can kind of see these. I think it may be helpful context to kind of walk through. Probably should have had these sitting next to me earlier, but I want to show some of these things. I guess we're going to talk this one. I don't have the 95 Panini album, but here's an example of the El Mundo Deportivo album, right? It actually comes in 2 languages. It comes in Catalan and Spanish, and I want to show you how these stickers are so you get the impression. So you can see here's one in the album, right? So you can see here's the album. It's issued by El Mundo Deportivo, which is a newspaper. And it has a lot of historical stickers. Here's Garrincha, Pele, Maradona, Puskas, Cruyff, Bobby Charlton. It walks through all the World Cup history, and importantly, these were handed out, and they were handed out on these sheets. Okay, so to get a card in a slab, you actually need to cut around the sticker. The problem with these is they are super close to one another, and it's a very, very daunting task. The other problem with El Mundo Deportivo is that once you stick them in, like this Garrincha sticker, I mean, they are stuck, right? You actually, to get them out, I mean, unless there's some sort of a solvent, you'd need to, you basically need to cut them out of the album, which destroys the album. So they come on these sheets, and there are different ones. Here's a nice picture of a team one. There are other ones that have like 6. So you'd get these handed out, in your newspaper. Maybe you put them in the book. Maybe you didn't. Maybe there's a bunch of different sheets up here. So this is how you'd get them, and you'd paste them into the album, and they're nearly impossible to get out. So to get one, somebody to however many years we are now beyond this, 30 years or so, you'd need to get some of these sheets and cut them out. And most of these things, honestly, were trashed. They were either pasted into the album or they were trashed. Okay, that's that. And then you have the typical Panini packets that were the distribution. And I don't have that album or a packet. I love both. Actually, I have the next year's packet, but that's neither here nor there. So, nothing comes to mind for me when I look at the El Mundo Deportivo data. I just say, okay, I understand why it's hard to get a high grade on a hand cut card, right? And you'll see in my example, this PSA 7, it doesn't say on it hand cut, this particular one, but it now, if you submit this card, it'll say hand cut, which it should, because all these stickers are hand cut. Again, I thought that was a real positive announcement from PSA that they're re-looking at all of their cards and they're trying to decide what's the right way to label them. I think that's really good for the hobby, even if there's going to be some breakage and it'll be painful to a certain extent. So after doing all this data, two things come. Certainly El Mundo Deportivo is rare. I think we all could have, any of us that follow it probably would have said that was the case. Particularly a second learning out of this to me was that the BGS higher grade ones are things that I would look carefully at or wonder why. I'd be much more cautious buying a higher grade BGS one than I would buying a higher grade SGC or PSA one. But again, that doesn't say anything. It's just a spidey sense that I would get based on this data. But again, rarity is not the only thing that matters, and far from it. So what else do we look at? Well, there's many different things I look at, and this is an example of 12 different factors that I look at, and there's probably 15, 20. You can have 4 or you can have 40, right? And if you guys want, hit me up on my Instagram and send me your email address. And if you're not very good at Excel, I can send this file on to you, and it will, it's kind of an active file. You can put in your preferences, and it tells you not just, which card you prefer, but actually by how much, right? Again, because I've always said I love both of these cards. So here's some examples, right? Is it the first card, right? And this goes to desirability. And for me, if it's the first card, that really matters to me, right? I know that not a lot of people are in that boat. A lot of people, don't necessarily care. They want actually a physical card. They want some other thing, right? So if you're in that camp, then that's completely fine. This is where you put your different weights, right? For me, that's particularly important. And then I think about the current population reports, which we know are not reliable for soccer, but they are relevant in today's market. But more importantly, I start to think about the future pop reports. And this is all an assessment of rarity. And rarity for me, if those of you who see my collection, as a collector, is something that I really, really enjoy. I love finding the thing where there's only a few copies. And I don't care if it takes me 10 years. I'm on the hunt and I find it, and it gives me a tremendous amount of pleasure to find rare items. I don't get nearly as much pleasure out of just paying a high price for a high grade, relatively common item. That's not me. There's plenty of other people out there that really enjoy that, right? So I'm not that guy. So I care a ton about, is it their first card, and is it what do I think the future pop report's going to have? And after 12 plus years of collecting, I have a very good intuitive feel for what is potentially out there, right? Am I going to be wrong? Absolutely, right? But am I going to be right? Absolutely, right? So it's going to be always a mixed bag, but that's all we have. And to me, that's really important. If you're, looking as a value investor to say, okay, get into something that has an epic player, really important card, and is going to be one of the rarest cards 5 years, 10 years from now, that's an important piece of data if you're that long-term investor. So for me, That's important. And I use my spidey senses and experience and frequently ask a lot of other experienced collectors when they're not as common cards of this about what do they think, how many have they seen, who do they know has them, and then I try to adjust that in my mind. And by the way, not every time that I do this am I sitting down on an Excel spreadsheet and running the numbers. But if you're going to spend a big card in your collection and you're really tied between two cards, this isn't necessarily a bad way to think about it, right? So I think about, this is the first card, current pop report, future pop report, and then I think about the issuer, right? And the issuer, that goes to the authenticity, credibility. And that's also linked with lineage, right? In soccer, there's probably no better lineage than Panini, right? Going back to the early 1960s. You could say, Merlin in the UK, huge brand. Tops for ultra modern, especially American collectors, because of the lineage of that brand. Even if the sets have a much shorter shelf life. So the question is, does the issuer have that that lineage? So let's go and take some of this stuff. And I know for some people that's paramount, but also remember, with lineage comes population. Typically, if you're a very, very successful manufacturer, you're going to have very good distribution. You're going to have high print runs, and those cards are going to be out there, right? So anyway, Mundi Cromo also in Spain, great lineage for the time they had the license. So here, let me just go through some of these examples. You can see it on the screen, but for me, the first card and the pop reports are actually paramount, which speak to rarity, desirability, long-term rarity. So for me, I have the Mundo Deportivo scoring really, really well, getting 10s and 9s in that category. And I see the Panini Vote Ball getting lower grades from my perspective, 5 and 3. So it's, basically the Mundo Deportivo's 3 times less common. So therefore it gets 3 times higher of a score, a 9 to a 3. And then I'm thinking, hey, in the long term, would that balance out? Well, I'm actually giving the benefit of the doubt to the vote ball here, although my intuition tells me that likely, this 3-to-1 ratio is likely to stay or even go more in the favor of the Mundi Cromo. But I'm going to give a little bit of a benefit of the doubt to the vote ball in this particular example. Then I say, okay, do I like the issuer? Well, Panini, you can't argue with Panini, right? You can't argue with their lineage. They get 10s, right? So you can't argue with the fact they have the league license, so they get a 10. In the case of the Mundo Deportivo, they don't. El Mundo Deportivo is an important newspaper, right? So it's better than nothing. I think that actually works to their advantage, but at the same point, it's not Panini, right? So there's definitely a discount there. And then on the lineage, they're not very well known for creating epic soccer stickers. They just happened on it, right? But the funny thing, I was thinking of another newspaper. Many of you who are U.S.-based collectors, I always like to run parallels to other sports and other things I collect. Many people know that I collect I have a large baseball collection, Negro League baseball collection, as well as regular baseball, boxing, and even some Pokemon cards. And one of the most epic baseball cards ever issued was issued by the newspaper, the Sporting News, and that's the Babe Ruth rookie card. So, do they have a great lineage? No. Did they have, the league license? No. Was the issue known and is it known for that? No. So you can absolutely have epic, amazing cards that are issued without these 3 things. At least the market has said that in other markets that I tend to follow. At the same point, do they matter? Absolutely they matter. Okay? The next thing about, collectability to me that matters is something hand cut. And in general, I have a high preference for things that are not hand cut, standard cut, as I do for things that are hand cut. So in this particular example, I'd say, okay, that's relatively important to me. I'm going to give it a 5. It's not unimportant. It's not the most important, but for me, it's important, and it's worth 5 in terms of my weight. And I'm going to give that a 1 because it's hand cut, right? That's definitely not a good thing for El Mundo Deportivo. On the flip side, the Panini is a standard issue sticker, even if they have sometimes these funny diamond cuts that Panini stickers usually can. And then another thing that I have is standard versus oversized. I have a preference for standard cards versus larger cards that don't fit in a standard holder. Anything that's bigger than this ends up in a slab that is, this is a SGC one, but a bigger slab. I don't prefer these slabs. I like the standard ones. So these are the ones that I tend to stick with. So that's my preference. And both of these stickers in this case fit in the standard size thing, so they both get 10s. Then I think, okay, do I like the way that they were distributed? Is it in a pack, or is it particularly in a newspaper where you're getting these types of sheets? And I think that this is a sheet pulled where you're getting some random things in your newspaper, or you're getting one a week and you have to be a tent and you have to collect them. Well, that's better than just buying a complete set that has every card that you want, but it's not as good as having a pack. So again, I go with the Panini boat ball. The next thing that I ask myself is, does it have an album? Because most soccer collections around the world have some sort of album, which meant it was meant to be collected. For those of you who've watched some of my videos, you'll see that I don't love the Gazette Pele rookie because it comes on an LP and you cut it out of something that was not intended to be collected. It looks cool, but it wasn't intended to be collected. When you have an album, it was intended to be collected, and to me, that's something that matters, right? So I care about the distribution, and I think pack is the best. On demand or full set is the worst, and somewhere in between. I think the Mundo Deportivo for me is somewhere in between. The next thing is card versus sticker. I don't really care. I know a lot of people do, but I weight this as almost unimportant to me. When I first started collecting soccer cards 12 years ago, I did have to make an adjustment from a card mentality to a card and sticker mentality, like a lot of American collectors need to, because of our natural bias towards cards. We don't have a sticker culture, so it was harder for me, as it was for I think a lot of my American collectors, to make this adjustment. So in the end, you need to calibrate, for you, in this particular case, they're both stickers, so they both get the same score regardless of the weighting. Another thing that matters in general is the category of eye appeal. And there's many different things to eye appeal. For me, something that I pay a lot of attention to is the kit pictured. For instance, I have no real affiliation with PSG, and I probably won't be getting many Messi cards in his PSG uniform, even if they're autographed. I'm going to prefer those in Barca. That's what I identify with. I've seen him play multiple times for Barca, and while I've seen him also play for Argentina, his best performances were in that kit, and so that's where I like to see him. And in this particular case, the kit actually matters quite a bit to me, and I give it a 6 weighting. And I find, for me, I don't remember anything he did at PSV personally. I know he was great there. He was amazing. But I don't remember that. But what I remember is, the fact that he lost in 98 and he came back and won in 2002. And I don't remember because he didn't play much in 94 when he won. But, he's on that team too. So I really associate him with that yellow kit. And it's a strong association. Then, you also can take into account, should take into account, whether it's a photo, whether it's sometimes we have drawings, whether it's an action shot, whether it's a headshot. And, for me in this particular case, I find the actual photograph on the Panini one to be better because he's smiling there. You know, he looks happy. It's clearer. It's not as dark, but it's not by a huge amount. I love to see, you know, Ronaldo's braces here. I mean, he's literally just a kid. And I love the parallel between him and Neymar that I'll be making soon. So anyway, and you can flip this around. You can do this. And then another thing that matters to me, if you've seen my collection, is I love attractive backs. And in this particular case, the Mundo Deportivo is has, you know, when you peel out, it's this white back right here, which has a sticker that you would peel. And the obviously the Panini has a more standard Panini back, which, you know, I don't love, but it's certainly way better than a blank back, which, you know, certainly, you know, it's not my favorite. So the attractive back only gets a 1 on the Mundo Deportivo, and I give an 8 on the Panini. And then, you know, other eye appeal. This is just the subjective things of, you know, do you like the feelings? Do you like the colors? I mean, super all catch all other one. I also give the benefit to the Panini here as well. But when you sum up the total in my particular case, it says, hey, I have a slight preference, very slight in this particular example, of 4%. And I'll come back to the end and show you how that could change. And so what we're not all the time are we going on this level of detail about what's important, but, you know, at least on some level, you're doing it even if you're not doing the math, because that you'll have a natural calling for 1, 2, 4, 10, 15, 20 different things. You can expand this as much as you want. You can change the weightings as much as you want. And that helps you to get to some quantitative validation. And if you're trying to test your thing, you're like, how much more do I like it? You can start to understand, okay, I need to like this, you know, to pay twice as much. I need to like it this much more. Now that, so let's just take that and say, you need to do all this type of calibration yourself. In my particular case, I came out with a slight preference of the Mundo Deportivo of mathematically 4% using this weighting. But does that mean that I'm basically a wash on same graded El Mundo Deportivos and Paninis? No, absolutely not. Because if we go back and look at the pop reports, what it says is, hey, if I want, you know, a top 30 card, more or less, from Mundo Deportivo, I'll be looking at a 4 to a 6. If I want a top 30, and I'm just looking at PSA right now, right? If I want a top 30, top 30 PSA, Panini, I'm going to be, up here in, kind of the 7-ish range, right? So over here, we're like probably talking, a 5. So there's at least 2 grades difference of something that would be equal, right? So again, you need to think about the way that you think about it, and ultimately calibrate that for your purchase decisions, for your collecting decisions, because typically we can't, have it all. Okay, so let's see. In the end, the obviously when you look at this and you look at what drives this difference, you can see the Panini wins on so many issues of collectability and lineage, the issuer, the licensing, right? And for me, at least, the kit and the rarity matter a lot. And I probably, in this other eye appeal, I probably could have given, more credit to the El Mundo Deportivo. Again, this is just an example. So in likelihood, I gave the benefit over here to the Panini. I gave the benefit over here to the Panini. If I shifted a little bit, maybe I end up with a 15-20% preference for the Mundo Deportivo. It doesn't really matter. I don't use that 15-20% for that much more, just besides a conviction call. And that's what you'll have to do. So in the end, to tie a bow around this one, the Mundo Deportivo is considerably more rare than Panini, But obviously the rarity is not the only thing that matters, and your results can be significantly different. If I was looking at this data and say, okay, where would I want to focus based on this data if I was a collector of these? Well, I generally want to focus on SGC and PSA slabs, given this anomaly that I showed in the Beckett's. And I generally want to focus on grades 4, 4 to 10 is unrealistic, but 4 to 7, 8, that's where I would focus. And that's kind of how I'd come out of this analysis, right? Both epic cards, both worth collecting. So I'm gonna put the R9 stack over here to the side, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit about the Neymar cards, right? And so here again, to start off with disclosure, I have a couple of the Neymar cards. This is the 154s. I have 5 of the 155s. So again, so there's no misunderstandings. I have 3 of the Card Mania cards. And then I have, I'm not going to really talk about this one, but I have 2 of the Campeonato Brazils. I'll talk a little bit about it, maybe, at the end, because I do think it's somewhat relevant. So again, I'm going to go through this one a lot faster. Again, start with the data. The Card Mania, I was shocked to see PSA has only graded 2 of these cards. It's my understanding they still grade this card. And the Abril Goal, they've graded 45 of each one, and so that's a total of 100 cards basically. Actually this one's got to be slightly wrong, so I don't know why I lost 10, because if there's 45 for each, that'd be 100, and here we have 90. So I know, because it includes the Card Mania. Okay, so that's right. So there's 90 Abril Goal and there's 10 Card Mania. Okay, so from a Card Mania, it's mostly SGC, and they've graded 4 from 7 to 10 and 4 from 4 to 6, and PSA has just 2 graded, and BGS has none. And then you also have, for the Abril Goal, you see again the same phenomena where the BGS, out of the 24 they've graded, 20 are in the 7 to 10 range, whereas for PSA it's considerably less, and even SGC's only 50% at 7 to 10s, and the PSA ones are 26%. So it seems like you'd probably, again, I'd just be nervous walking into some BGS Abril Goals. So here, obviously, you can see from my own cards, and just in general, the Abril Goal is my preferred Neymar rookie card. But I don't discount the Card Mania or the Campeonato for the same reasons that we were just talking about. Number one, I really care about the first cards. And I really care about, rarity. Again, it's not the only thing, but it matters quite a bit to me. So what I do is, I kind of walk through and I say, okay, same math that we do first. I don't need to. You can read this yourself. But basically, on the rarity, from my perceived rarity and this actual graded rarity right now, you see that the Abril Goal is more scarce right now. Yes, it scores poorly on Lineage. This is a pirate type company, but in the end, it does have its album, right? It does have its album, and this again, as I've said before, it matters to me that it has the album, right? It's not the most fancy album that you've ever seen. It's a big set. There's 260 people in it. Fat Ronaldo, actually, one of his last cards is in it. I love that. Oscar, a bunch of different guys are in the set, and it comes in an album, and it comes in packs. This is a little sign of the packs. So it's pack issued. I mean, are the packs as nice or as cool as the Panini packs? No, but you can get it, as it says right here. You can get 4 figures in the pack for 50 reais, right? And you can buy the album for 250 reais. Very cheap, low end for probably consumers that don't have a lot of disposable income that want to enjoy their national sport, and they can't pay the higher prices of the Panini. And given the fact that they are collected and they are issued for people and they do exist despite the licensing thing, I tend to look the other way. And maybe that's wrong, but I find that it's critical that or not critical, but I find it preferable that everybody in a society can participate in their national sport. That's what these guys try to do. Whether you like it or not, that's your own issue. So I tend not to value it as much, but I still say, hey, it's important, right? And the reality is the Card Mania doesn't have those things and suffers dramatically because of it. But does it make it completely uncollectible? To me, no, right? I think the photo quality and the type printing on the Real Gold are significantly better. The back is beautiful on that card. This is the Card Mania has a blank back. Now, what I'll say is that the Card Mania has a really nice photographic surface that's really hard to get in high grade. Most of the time, they have these streaks on them. They were cheap, little stickers, but the surface on them is really cool and photographic. It's not something you just print off a laser printer. It's actually nicer than a lot of stickers from different places. So in the end, I like it. I still prefer the Real Gold, but I wouldn't say it's a absolute complete landslide for me. I do think that in the long term that the Card Mania will have the advantage from a pop report. It makes sense. A Real Gold is a Panini company. They all have better distribution. They'll come out, but in general, I think in the long run, this isn't something to completely stay away from. This is my 2 cents. So anyway, those are some of my thoughts when I come back and say, hey, you know what? In the end, what does it mean for me? What would I do with this data? I would say, hey, I would be looking on the Card Mania to be looking, at a copy. I personally, as a collector, I have 3, but I'd be looking to get a copy. That's me myself. And then where would I focus on the Real Golds? I'd focus on the PSA and the SGCs in grades of higher than 4. That's generally where I would focus, right? So, the conclusions on that conversation is, when I go through all of this and you pull the data, on real time, I think occasionally we do one card at a time, but when you actually come out and you pull the data, these pops for these mega players are so low, right? They're likely to grow, of course, like all soccer pops, but they really don't seem commensurate with the size of Brazil. So I don't know what to make of that yet. I don't know if we're in for a 2x, a 3x, a 10x. I really don't know. So I think there's a little bit of nervousness there, but you could easily take, there's 100 graded Neymar rookies. You could easily take 10 times that number and still feel really good, to me, relative to his importance, because these players are incredibly relevant, and could be very desired, and if they're not, then I think all other players are going to have way more of an issue getting any market recognition and value, right? So I personally think they're both generational players. I know people don't necessarily like either one of them at different times for different reasons, but to me, I think they are. If you don't, then don't collect these guys. Another thing that came out of this to me is that the BGS seems to be pretty soft on their grading in R9s and Neymar. So if I was going to be stretching for a card, it wouldn't likely be BGS in the cards we've gone over. More than anything, it would be the PSA copies, and maybe to a lesser extent the SGC copies. Then and then the other learning that I had when I went through this is the Mundo Deportivo is really hard in high grades, and you really start to see that when you break down that 4 to 6 range. I think it's heavily weighted towards the 4 because of the hand cut nature of the card. So every time that you pull the data, analyze it, and you're doing your research, you tend to find unexpected things, and that's part of the grind. That's part of the fun, and hopefully you guys do find it fun, because you need to grind a lot more in the soccer space than you do in other places where just data is more clear, the accumulation of facts is more clear, and in the end you need to put in the time if you're going to be successful in soccer. I did want to talk about a card that I think PSA is not currently grading, and it's this Campeonato Brasileiro card that I have a couple copies of. You can see in this one with the packs. Actually, to me, it's a beautiful card with a great cool back. I think from what we understood from the PSA guy, Matt Hendler, they've suspended that for the time being. They've suspended a lot of cards that they're investigating in. I don't know if they're looking for the album. Clearly, this was another issue similar to Card Mania, where it was pack issued. It was not licensed, so that's a problem. But also they grade the Card Mania. So trying to figure out what these companies do ultimately is a play, I guess, if you want to do that. But the reality is, for me, when I look at these cards and I know that they're issued in Brazil, I know they're 2009. I see this young kid on a card, that was collected. I want to collect it. I'm a collector. I don't necessarily say that's the best. Those are the best types of items you want to invest in, but sometimes those pay off, and a lot of times they don't. The licensing issue for me is not very important, because most of the cards I have are not licensed. Most vintage is not licensed, so I become more comfortable with that than some others. The Panini fascination for me mostly relates to the World Cup albums, because that is what I remember and have collected for many years. But I understand the global obsession with Panini. Panini was basically a non-factor in the U.S. market when I grew up, so I don't have that hard of a pull to Panini. So it's like, hey, Panini, something else, throw it up, right? In fact, I'm actually kind of, probably more close to Merlin, just having seen those in the UK, through time. So, in the end, you have got to do you. Don't listen to the way that I collect. Try to have some sort of, whether it's as quantitative as my weighting concepts, or whether that is some kind of a subjective feel or checklist. You do what makes you feel comfortable to spend your money. You need to live with your decisions. And just because I like something doesn't mean that you should. And just because you like something doesn't mean that I should. The one thing that I love is having these dialogues, and people who are in the soccer market or getting in the soccer market. I believe with generational players like this, with amazing early stickers, rookie issue, constellation of rookies, like the Mundo Deportivo, the Panini, the 1994-95 Panini, or these Neymar issues. Personally, I think you get a lot of pleasure out of them. I know I do, and I hope that that you guys both enjoyed this video and enjoy collecting, because to me that's what it's about. It's not only about having the best, highest grade sticker. It's about enjoying it for the reasons that you're collecting. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. And if you have, hopefully you'll smash that like button and subscribe if you like my content. And here's until next time. It's Al with El Rey Collection. Thanks, guys.